Welcome to another video where today I'm going to talk a little more about how the NFL draft went. We're about a week out, or a week later. Here are my 5 favorite under-talked about players picked. This is a little balance between, sleepers, just great value, players who I think fit perfectly with the team that grabbed them. So, let's get into it. The first player we're going to start with is Quinyon Mitchell, the corner who got drafted by the Eagles. Mitchell was my number 1 rated corner in this draft, and while it wasn't by a landslide, he was the best. Mitchell is an extremely fast and twitchy athlete, both in short yard burst, but also top end speed. He's also very aggressive. He likes to play physical. Those two factors, combined with his long frame, made him top 10 in pass breakups in both 2022 and in 2023 in FBS. His quick feet and very quick hips to stay with defenders on press coverage, but even if the wide receiver does create separation, he's fast enough to catch up. He's also very good at baiting QBs, staying close enough to make them throw to his wide receiver, but also close enough to gap and get to the ball. Like I said, he's very aggressive and he takes that attitude to the catch point as well, attacking the football, which again is part of the reason his breakups were so high. He's also a very good tackler and he's a surprisingly hard hitter. Now, he does have a few weak points, like his zone coverage isn't his strongest point and he can be a little too aggressive, but he is a phenomenal talent and he is just what the Eagles wanted to get because their defense really slacked in the secondary last season. So on to the second player drafted. We have a corner that the Eagles picked up.
Wasn't that the first pick?
Well, they did 2 of them, and both of them were steals. They got Cooper DeJean in the second round. Now, Cooper was projected to be a first-round pick in most mock drafts, but he fell all the way to 40 where the Eagles traded up to grab him. Cooper is a very quick athlete. He has a smooth start to him, and with his backpedaling, he turns his hips smooth. He's able to stop and start on a dime. He's an extremely athletic individual. He's very physical, he has a muscular frame, and he's also aggressive. He can play well in both man coverage, being able to press, even though that's not his strong suit. He can run with defenders, or he can play the zone as he's good at reading the QB's eyes and seeing a play develop. He's extremely smart, great football IQ. He plays his best in the slot or maybe safety, but I don't doubt that he can play the outside and thrive too. He can move all around the field, and if you have a good defensive-minded coach, you can use him as a chess piece and disrupt the play at any point in the game, any point in the field. He's also probably the best run defender out of all the top corners of the class. So the Eagles, who had a glaring need in the secondary, used their first 2 picks to get 2 different corners who both have some really strong suits, and I think they can play well off each other and off the other corners that are already on the team. So my third favorite draft pick, or under-talked about draft pick, and this is probably not the best way to describe it because it's definitely being talked about, but to me not in the right way, whereas the Chiefs taking Xavier Worthy. Now, Worthy was not my favorite wide receiver in this class by far. I actually had him ranked kind of low on my list of wide receiver prospects, but this is the best possible landing spot for him. And everyone is kind of talking about that, but again, I have a different reason why. He's one of the most explosive athletes to ever come out of college. We all know that. And a lot of people think he's going to be Tyreek Hill, but I don't see that happening. I think that's a far, far stretch. But what I do see is someone who will be very versatile and will cause chaos on the field. I like to think about it the way the effect Tyreek had on the field. Not his protection, but the effect. Or if you're an NBA fan, think about how Curry affects the court even when he doesn't have the ball. They're the type of player that gravitates people towards them naturally, even if that's not their assignment, because they have such a big like touchdown in a fraction of a second ability that you have to have an eye on the whole time, and that makes it harder for you to lock down your own assignment. So while I don't see Worthy becoming the Tyreek Hill who gets 120 catches, 1,500 receiving yards, double-digit touchdowns, I see players like Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, Rice if he ends up playing this season, Hollywood Brown, having even better seasons than they would because of Worthy's gravitational effect on the field. And don't get me wrong, Worthy will have his handful of excellent plays. Coach Reed will make sure of that. But I think people are undervaluing that aspect of Worthy, and he will just allow the Chiefs offense to completely open up and give everyone an easier day. At number 4, I have linebacker Peyton Wilson out of NC State. Peyton is probably the most athletic of all of the top inside linebackers in this draft class. He was one of the most productive players in all of NCAA with total tackles for loss. His sack numbers, passes deflected, interceptions for an inside backer were phenomenal. He's the type of guy who will be all over the field every single play, and he has an insane work ethic. He just wants to grind. He wants to play his hardest every single play. The best part about Peyton, to me, is his fit on the Steelers. The Steelers just signed Patrick Queen, who's also an inside linebacker, to a pretty heavy deal. But Queen's biggest flaw as a player is his ability to cover, to be a coverage backer. You know, you don't really want him matched up against some of these explosive running backs or tight ends. That's where Peyton, I think, will really help out. I mean, Peyton will help with the run game, the pass rush, and coverage. He'll do all of it. But I think he'll play alongside Patrick Queen extremely well, which is why I have him on this list. He does have some injury history that hopefully will not derail his career. He's had 2 ACL injuries that at this point left him with no ACL at all in his right knee. But he's played without his ACL since his true freshman year. There have been other players that have definitely succeeded or beyond succeeded without ACL. So there was a path for him to succeed, but there's a reason he fell in the draft because of the injuries, because of the concerns. So we might not ever see him reach his potential, but if we do, it'll be pretty fun to watch. Then my last under-talked about player is Jalen Wright, the running back who the Dolphins picked up. He is probably my favorite day 3 pickup, and if you don't know anything about him, you're probably thinking he won't be relevant on this team. The Dolphins still have Mostert, they still have A-Chain. But I actually think there's a likely scenario that we'll see Wright be a key piece to this team by at least next year. As expected with being a Dolphins draft pick, he is an electric athlete, one of the best ones in this draft class. If you look at his combine numbers, the 40, the broad jump, his vertical, and just watching his tape, you can tell just how much of a freak athlete this guy is. He had the highest yards per carry out of the entire FBS with a minimum of 120 carries. So every time he touches the ball, he's gone. It's just insane. He's also an extremely stocky athlete. He rips through arms tackles, he stays balanced in traffic, and once he kind of gets out of that little traffic there, he's able to explode out of the hole. But he's also a patient runner who lets his blocks develop. He really is a very well-balanced player. So let's look at his situation on the Dolphins. Mostert is 32. He has this year and next year on the books, but there is an out after this year that would basically result in very little dead money. So depending how he plays, I could still see the Dolphins releasing him. Last year was mostly a fluke. I do think he's a good player, but he's not. He had 18 touchdowns last year. That's not his norm. If he struggles or gets hurt, and if we see HA get hurt again, I think we could see Wright early. But even if we don't, I love Wright in this offense, at least by next year. I think he will be the steal of the draft. So these are 5 of my favorite picks of the draft. Again, I wasn't trying to go, Caleb Williams, Daniels, May, like the obvious ones. I'm trying to talk about some guys that I think are going under the radar because of all the other big news. I think all 5 of these guys will be legit contributors to their team this year or by the latest next year. I think they're all steals, even though some of them were first round picks. I think they're all perfect fits